Hey, freak! I just had my first day off in over a month. Hello everybody, Tyrone the Guy 3 here, and welcome to Dragon Ball Z Movie Reviews. Today I'll be reviewing Movie 13, Dragon Ball Z, Wrath of the Dragon. I like this movie. This is a really good movie, actually. I'm glad I've escaped the shitstorm that is Bio Broly and the blandness of the Fusion Reborn to do the review of this movie, so I'm really excited. Dragon Ball Z, Wrath of the Dragon. Now, let's get started with the timeline placement. This movie is the least stressful of all the movies because it's in a timeline placement that can fit in, that can pretty much fit. This movie takes place right after the Buu Saga. Right after. After Kid Buu is defeated. Fat Boo's nowhere to be seen in this movie, but a lot of people are kind of missing from this movie too. This is the one movie I think where Hercule doesn't make any type of appearance. So that's kind of weird. I know Krillin and the others do, but Android 18's missing. And yeah, a large amount of the cast is missing. But the cast that is there is mostly just the cast that fought in the Majin Buu saga. So, yeah, there you go. That's the timeline placement. Now let's get started with the summary. The movie starts off with the lower half of Hirudegan destroying a random planet, and it stomps and wrecks everything within sight. And then the wizard Hoi starts evilly laughing and saying, "Next stop, planet Earth." Then we cut to planet Earth, and what's basically happening is that there's a car chase. A bunch of criminals are trying to get away in a getaway car, and while they're doing this, they end up getting pursued by the police. However, instead of the police being able to catch them, Great Saiyan Man and Great Saiyan Woman make an appearance. In this movie, she's actually called Great Saiyan Man 2. The name Great Saiyan Woman, I think, came from the game Dragon Ball Z Infinite World, and it also made an appearance in one of the episodes of Dragon Ball Z where she calls herself the Great Saiyan Woman. But her name is actually Great Saiyan Man number 2, which is weird because she's not a man, she's a woman. Anyway, Great Saiyan Man and Great Saiyan Woman, or Great Saiyan Man 2, introduced themselves to be the Great Saiyan Supreme Fighting Team, which is a long name, and even the criminals point that out, and they get embarrassed by it. While this is all happening, Hui actually sees Gohan and Videl and begs them for help. Well, he doesn't quite beg them for help yet. Gohan and Videl come in late to class, and anyone who can assume that two teenagers or adults or whatever who have come in late for class and come in at the same time would assume that they are doing Anyway, while this is happening, Videl gets a call in from the police saying that some man is about to commit suicide. Gohan has to be released even though he just made it. Oh, also it's fun to note that Sharpener and Eraser are here, so yeah, that's their movie appearance. They're named off school supplies. Anyway, when that happens, Hui is at the top of a giant tower, and I love what one of these citizens say. Hui is basically saying all the stuff you would say if you were going to commit suicide. He's like, just one jump and it'll be all over. And one of the citizens goes, "Yeah, all over us." It's a pretty funny thing to say. Just like in the midst of suicide, that's like one of the last things I'd expect to hear. So Great Saiyan Man comes in and he's like, "All right, you can jump. I'll just catch you." And he's like, "You fool, I want to die." And Great Saiyan Woman is like, whatever, let him jump. Videl's being a real bitch in this scene and in the scene following. So Hui jumps, and then he quickly asks someone to save him while he's in mid-jump. Gohan saves him, and they all return back to this little water fountain thing so that Hui can explain exactly what's going on. There's a great evil, and he needed someone that he knew was strong enough to try to help him open this little magic box that he has so that he can free the great hero known as Tapion. Hui is actually up to something, but that's revealed later on. So Hui tells them about the music box, and Gohan tries to open it, but to no avail. Videl just looks at the thing and says it's impossible to open. We're not going to be able to do it. Apparently where Hui comes from, he knows about the Dragon Balls, though. So he immediately tells the others that hey, can you all help me release Shinron? We cut to West City's Capsule Corp, or Trunks and Bulma and Vegeta's home, and they try to get the music box open. Even Goku's there trying to get it open along with Goten and the others, and Goku can't open it, so Krillin even jokingly says that box isn't going to be open anytime soon. Goku stops and realizes, hey, we need the Dragon Balls. So Bulma basically uses the Dragon Radar and tells them each area to go to find all 7 of the Dragon Balls. They all split up into different directions and try to find it. I actually pretty like this Dragon Ball search scene. It's pretty short, but it does show like comical things happening in between them. Trunks and Goten go into a snowy-like mountain region to find their Dragon Ball near a snowman while they're snowball fighting. Videl and Gohan find theirs in a wasteland-like canyon area, and Videl jokingly comments that Tapion could be this really handsome-looking warrior, so Gohan gets a little jealous. Goku and Hoi actually find theirs at a zoo where a bunch of lions are playing with the Dragon Ball, and Goku comically beats up the lions and gets the Dragon Ball while one of them's biting on Goku's head. Krillin finds his in a haunted like forest area where a bunch of these little zombies and things are. It's like an amusement park thing. And he finds his in there. So when they find the rest of the Dragon Balls, they finally gather them up. And when they gather them up, they summon Shinron. Now, Shinron's really inconsistent as of the last few movies we've seen him, because the first time he was released in Fusion Reborn, he gave the Z Warriors the option of 3 wishes instead of 1, which is weird because the Earth Dragon is actually only supposed to give 2 wishes ever since Dende became the Guardian. But whatever. Anyway, in this movie, the dragon gives them 1 wish. I'm not sure why that's the case, but they get 1 wish. Whatever. They wish that the magic box can be opened, so the magic box gets open. This is one of the first few wishes that can actually be done by Shinron too. So when the magic box when Shinron goes away, the magic box finally plays a tune, and Bulma actually really likes the song that comes out, but Videl says it sounds like a very sad song. Tapion gets released from the magic box, but when he does, Hoi is doing some weird evil aura magic shit in the background, and we don't know what it is because none of the Z Warriors take the time to look slightly to the left behind them. Anyway, when that happens, Tapion gets released and the magic box actually gets destroyed after Tapion's release. Apparently, Tapion doesn't know who Hoi is, even though he can recognize his look and he knows what race he's from. Whatever. Tapion gets pissed that he's released, actually. Like, he's very upset that he's released because he's the only one that can conceal the top half of Harudagon. So he's very pissed at everybody, and he basically runs away from the entire gang. Trunks, who immediately gets amused by Tapion's appearance and the fact that he's a hero, as they stated earlier in the movie, goes to go follow him along with Goten. While that's happening, Hoi basically evilly laughs and moves off in order to release the lower half of Harudagon. We cut to Trunks trying to find Tapion, but Tapion's really pissed once they find him in a dumpster garbage area, and he gets very pissed, and Trunks immediately runs away along with Goten. Afterwards, later that night, they have a barbecue party, and Master Roshi is just comically being obnoxious and goofy and gets comically slapped by Bulma. Trunks takes the time to try to grab a couple of shish kebabs so that he can feed them to Tapion, because Tapion has to be hungry. He's been in that box for literally 1,000 years, 100 years, or whatever. While that's happening, Goku actually sees that Trunks is trying to grab one of the shish kebabs and pushes one of them closer. So it shows how nice Goku is as a parent and whatever. Not they're Trunks' parent, but as a father figure, he shows to be very nice in that scene. Anyway, once that ends up happening, we cut to Trunks trying to bring Tapion some food. He actually leaves the food there, but Tapion's pissed and tells him to go away. So while that's all happening, Tapion starts just looking off into the distance and has some very dark thoughts going on in his head because he's shaking in pure fear. He can't go to sleep. While all this is happening, Videl gets a call downtown to head down and see what's going on, and Gohan gets the call as well. So they fly off into the city, and when they fly off into the city, they end up seeing a giant beast with legs, just legs and a tail, causing pure destruction all over the city. While this is happening, Gohan and Videl actually try to fight the thing, but they can't touch it. When the beast ends up attacking Gohan, right when it attacks Gohan counterattacks immediately around the same time. So that's the only time that Hirudegan's body shows to be very, very tangent, like physical. So Gohan actually learns of its weakness. And because he learns of its weakness, he's able to physically hurt this thing. And he even goes off as to attack it while it's down. When he does that, the thing comes back up and is ready to attack Gohan and Videl again. Only this time, Tapion ends up playing some song from the ocarina. Now, when Tapion plays the song from the ocarina, the lower half of Hirudegan slowly gets vaporized away. And when it gets vaporized away, it's gone and Tapion leaves in the fog. So Gohan and Videl are quite curious as to what they saw. After the mist of the fog, Videl points out that there's a mysterious person on top of the building and immediately runs away. So Gohan's like, alright, now we know who the bad guys are and we know who that great evil that Hoi was talking about earlier before. Meanwhile, we cut back to the garbage dumpster scene or whatever, and Tapion is just chilling, and he's trying to, get over what just happened. Some rats are trying to eat at the shish kebabs that Trunks laid from a while ago, so it shows that Tapion's not really eating at all. Trunks tries to bring him some drinks and even a towel and stuff, and Tapion gets really pissed and tells Trunks to leave, so Trunks immediately leaves. Like, Kid Trunks is slowly trying to become cool with Tapion, but to no avail. When that ends up happening, the next morning happens, and Trunks brings Tapion some more food. He brings him like some sandwiches and milk and stuff, and he's like, hey, you're okay. Tapion actually, the night before though, tried to go to sleep, and when he tried to go to sleep, the top half of Hirudegan ends up about to attack him, so he ends up using the ocarina in order to calm him down. When Trunks brings him breakfast the morning after, Tapion is opening up to Trunks a little bit more, but he's still closing off from him, period. Meanwhile, while that's happening, Hoi ends up trying to attack Tapion because Tapion's playing his ocarina just for fun to keep him awake and keep him sane, and Hoi tries to get the ocarina away from Tapion, and he actually ends up knocking the ocarina out of his hands. Trunks knows what that is, what the ocarina is, because he's played a couple of instruments before he even reveals that. And when that happens, Hoi tries to tell Trunks that Tapion is actually evil, which is weird because he's the one that said Tapion was a hero in the first place, and tells him to give him the ocarina. Kid Trunks is in a struggle as to who to trust, either Tapion or Hoi. Trunks trusts Tapion, though, and gives him the ocarina instead. When he gives him the ocarina, Tapion ends up taking it back, and Hoi ends up running away. Now that this has happened, it's opened Tapion up to Kid Trunks a little bit more because the two have grown a bond of trust. So they end up actually hanging out together and chilling with each other. And they spend pretty much the whole day together. Trunks shows off like a bunch of his toys and stuff, and one of the toys that Trunks has is a robot. It ends up falling over and breaking in half, and because it's broken into two halves, Tapion looks at both of the halves and gets like a dark, ominous like feeling that reminds him of what happened. So later on that day, Trunks is sent to bed, and he talks with Tapion, and Tapion basically reveals that, hey, I had a little brother named Minutia. He was just like you, and, you know, you remind me of him and all of that, and he's probably destroyed now and things like that. And Kid Trunks ends up going to sleep after hearing a couple of, like, Tapion's tale, and Tapion is basically about to leave. Now, the scene before, while they were still hanging out, while they were playing toys together, Videl and Bulma were actually washing dishes together. So it's cool to see that Videl's getting along with both Gohan's mother, and Kid Trunks' mother for that movie to, you know, gain more character bond. But basically, Bulma talks about how Kid Trunks is kind of jealous of Goten at times because Goten has an older brother. So he sees Tapion as an older brother to him. And Videl talks about how she's an only child so she can relate. But then she later on figures out that Tapion's the one that Kid Trunks is befriending, so she gets a little freaked out. But anyway, the night after, when Tapion puts Trunks to bed and is about to leave, Bulma talks to him and is like, hey, you can stay the night. And Tapion's like, I can't really stay anywhere. I'm a danger to all of you guys if I go to sleep. So then they sit down and talk about exactly what's going on. Tapion then reveals his backstory. Basically what ends up happening is that Hirudegan is a monster that was put away a long time ago on Tapion's home planet, Konos. When Tapion and his race, the Konosians or whatever, the Hirudegan was put away a long time ago by the Konosians' ancestor. However, an evil gang of wizard aliens known as the Kafkas wanted to destroy all life that wasn't their own. So to do that, they released Hirudegan from its long ancient slumber, and it ends up destroying all of Konos. Three wizards one wizard and Tapion and Minutia were able to help bring it down because they had discovered these two ocarinas which can immobilize the lower and upper half of Hirudegan. And then they also discovered an ancient enchanted sword. They were able to effectively use the flutes to immobilize Hirudegan, while the last Konosian was able to chop Hirudegan into two halves. Since these two halves were separate, they were placed both inside of Tapion and Minutia. When they were put both inside of them, each of them were consumed in two music boxes, which were launched in two separate areas of the galaxy. Apparently, since all of the Kafkas had been destroyed except for Hoy, Hoy was able to find Minutia and kill him, and then release the lower half of Hirudegan, controlling it. Him and the lower half of Hirudegan then made their way to Earth, where they could hope to free the other music box that contains Tapion, which he successfully did. Which leads us to now. Tapion also reveals that he hasn't had a wink of sleep since he's been released from the music box, which was approximately about 2 days ago. So Bulma then, once hearing all this, finds out, hey, we can actually get you a chamber where you can go to sleep. Tapion's like, that's impossible. The music box was the only thing that could do it. Bulma was able to pick up the remaining pieces from the broken music box after Tapion got free and was able to replicate into a giant machine sleep chamber. So, because of this, she says that in exchange, can you please spend a little bit more time with Trunks? He really likes you. So when that happens, the next day happens, and Tapion and Trunks end up playing together. Bulma finishes the giant machine magic music box chamber, and Tapion actually is able to go in there and go to sleep. However, when this ends up happening, even though he's asleep, Kafka is able to release the lower half of Hirudegan, and since he knows where Tapion is and they're so close now, the upper half of Hirudegan gets too strong because it's so close to its lower half that it starts to try to break free of its control, and it's not enough for Tapion to hold down. So the upper half of Hirudegan actually does get a little free because it drives Tapion crazy. Goku, Goten, Trunks, and Gohan go to investigate the situation of what's going on because they notice that the music chamber that Bulma had invented had been busted up. When they do this, they go outside to check, and they see that Tapion's barely struggling to keep that upper half still within Hirudegan. They try to help him, but Hoy comes in out of nowhere and knocks the ocarina completely out of Tapion's hands so that he can't hold Hirudegan anymore. Because of this, the upper half of Hirudegan gets free and attaches itself onto the lower half of Hirudegan, finally making a complete Hirudegan. Because Hirudegan's finally completed now and is at full power, the ocarina won't work and it won't hold Hirudegan down. So, with that said, Goku, Gohan, Goten, and Kid Trunks go into action, turning Super Saiyan, Ultimate Gohan, and Super Saiyan 2 in order to fight off against this monster. Harudegan pretty much is able to illusionize itself away from each of the attacks, so no physical attacks are working on Harudegan whatsoever. Gohan and the others can't track Harudegan's movements, and Harudegan ends up using sneak attacks behind each of them in order to knock them away. Gohan's about to get crushed to death by Harudegan's tail, but Vegeta interferes and it says this weird line. He basically states that he's got his first day off in over a month. So does Vegeta have a job? Whatever. But he gets very pissed that Harudegan stepped on half of his house. So he ends up attacking Harudegan, and he lasts a fairly long time actually, but he gets knocked away into an office building. Now this scene pretty much shows how well Vegeta is, because this scene finally shows that Vegeta is one of the good guys now. Like, his heart has reached a purity level to where he is considered a good guy now. Harudegan does a flamethrower-like attack towards the entire office building, and Vegeta blocks the entire attack using an energy shield. However, the energy shield wipes out all of his energy and he ends up fainting, but the office workers stop Vegeta from slamming down to the ground because, he protected them. Meanwhile, the fight continues, and when the fight continues, Gohan gets smacked, and then Goten gets smacked, Kid Trunks. Vidal's in the area, and she tries to dodge an attack, but ends up getting smacked against the wall. And yet, it's just a lot of chaos. And with all of this chaos happening, it looks like the Z Warriors are pretty much down for the count, and Hoi is basically like, I've won, Harudegan will wipe everything out. Tapion comes in. Oh, and when the fight continues to happen, Goten and Trunks get back up and then transform Super Saiyan and end up doing the fusion. When they end up doing the fusion, they turn into Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks and actually end up getting some pretty good hits off of Harudegan because they were able to lead Harudegan out into the open and then make fun of it. Harudegan got pissed and his body was tangent long enough for it to get hit by Gotenks' energy volley attack. When this happens, Harudegan is actually shown to be very frozen, like a brown statue. Goku tells them, what are you waiting for? Finish this thing off. And they end up attacking it. But it turns out that Harudegan, all he was doing was shedding his skin into a newer, more sleeker form. Which, I gotta be honest, his older form looked better. This form just looks like a giant cockroach or something, or a bug, or a cricket. Whatever. With Harudegan's new form, he's stronger and faster than he was before, so he immediately knocks Gotenks away, defusing both of them into Goten and Trunks. And then Gohan ends up getting knocked away again, and then Goku gets slammed. He tries to last a pretty decent time, but Goku can't beat him, not at this form. So, with that said, all of the Z Warriors are knocked out again, and this time when it seems like all hope seems lost, what ends up happening is that Tapion ends up playing his ocarina again, only this time he's playing a more intensified version of the song he's been playing. So it actually holds Harudegan down and immobilizes him for a while. With that said, Tapion is also able to put Harudegan and seal him completely into Tapion's body. Well, now that Harudegan is inside of Tapion's body, he asked Kid Trunks to go ahead and use the blade that he has to kill him. Why doesn't Tapion just use the sword and try to kill himself? I have no idea. But anyway, Kid Trunks takes the blade and he starts crying because he doesn't want to kill Tapion. He has a brother-like bond with him. He's about to try to do it, but then what ends up happening is that a full-bodied Harudegan that's more powerful than the original version is too strong for Tapion's body to handle, and Harudegan ends up freeing itself from Tapion's body. Because of this, it's back and it's stronger than ever, and it's just wreaking havoc. Goku finally gets up and is like, alright, it's time for me to finish this. I can't waste any more time or I'm going all out. So he transforms Super Saiyan 3. And when he transforms... Oh, and when Harudegan's released again, Hoi is like laughing and is like, there's no use trying to seal him up. Harudegan will rule the world under my control. And he starts laughing, and Harudegan is not paying Hoi any attention during this whole movie, by the way. So he ends up just causing destruction and actually stomps on Hoi, killing him. So now that Goku's at Super Saiyan 3, Gohan finally, for some reason, even though he knew this weakness all along, he finally tells Goku about the weakness that Hirudegan has. And Goku's like, alright, let's do this. And Goku ends up fighting off against Hirudegan. And while this is happening, Kid Trunks actually uses the sword and slices Hirudegan's tail. And when that happens, it actually causes some fairly large amount of damage to Hirudegan. But Goku's like, hey, Trunks, stay out of this. I'm going to beat him alone. Which is a dumb thing for Goku to say. I'll get into that during my feelings of the movie. Anyway, now that that's happened, Goku learns that if he actually uses different emotions like anger and things to intensify, then Hirudegan will become infuriated and try to attack, and when he attacks, he's physically tangent, so Goku can actually attack back. So Goku actually dodges a few hits and eggs Hirudegan on to keep attacking. So now that Hirudegan's in like fierce attack mode, Goku swiftly dodges one of the last punches that Hirudegan does, and then goes in and uses the Super Dragon Fist attack. Using the Super Dragon Fist pierces through Hirudegan's stomach and then wraps around itself and it destroys Hirudegan completely. Like, completely obliterates him. Like, they don't have anything to worry about now. Tapion thanks Goku for destroying Hirudegan, and then everything goes back to normal. Tapion goes inside of the time machine that Bulma has reconstructed into being a ship now, so that can probably lead him back to planet Konos, and possibly to a time where all of this was about to happen so that he can stop it. And with that said, Kid Trunks, before Tapion leaves, he gives Kid Trunks a sword, the sword that he was carrying this whole time, the enchanted sword. And then Tapion says that this sword was pretty much always meant to be yours. I could feel it. And Kid Trunks laughs about it, and he's all happy, and Goten wants to play with the sword too. And then Tapion goes off, and all's well that ends well. And then when Kid Trunks looks off into the distance and then looks at the sword, we cut to the credits, and one of the credits shows Trunks beating Frieza, future Trunks beating Frieza with the sword. Not the same sword, but it looks very similar. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. Now, my thoughts on the movie. I love this movie. Graphically, this is one of the best Dragon Ball Z looking Dragon Ball Z movies I've seen, because it's one of the last movies to come out before, you know, the obvious movie that I'm going to review next. And I really love the characters in this movie. Like, Goku's there, and his personality is shown, but he's not overshadowing everybody in this movie. And oddly enough, I kind of wish that he wasn't the one to beat Hirudegan, because the only reason that this movie's called Wrath of the Dragon is because of Goku's signature attack, the Dragon Fist. Unfortunately, this movie isn't about Goku at all. Like, this movie, you could have actually taken Goku out of this movie. I mean, I'm glad that he's in it. I'm glad that he played a role, and I'm glad that he was even comical in some scenes. But, to be honest, like, this movie wasn't about him. Like, I wish Kid Trunks was the one to finish Hirudegan off, or a combined effort of both Tapion and Kid Trunks. This movie was about them. This movie was about Tapion, and I'm glad that this movie was able to introduce a character that isn't a villain and make his whole story play out throughout the entire movie. They were able to introduce a new character and gradually develop his character to the point where it made sense. And like I said, this was good character development for Kid Trunks. He had a brother-like bond with Tapion, which was made for very good scenes. And this movie wasn't just plain fighting after fighting, and it wasn't the heroes getting their asses smacked. They even had a way to damage Hirudegan for a while. It's just that Hirudegan got stronger and shedded its skin into a new form, which caused more difficulties for the Z Warriors. And it also showed like traits like Vegeta becoming a full-fledged good guy, defending a lot of people and things like that. And like even the scenes with non-fighters like Videl and Bulma definitely made for very good scenes. All of this together, like the comical scenes with Krillin and searching for the Dragon Balls and the others searching for the Dragon Balls, and just like everything, it was a good mixture of plot with a really good plot and a really good backstory, as well as character interaction and character development. And one of the things I like to point out with Tapion, aka Link, I say Link because Tapion actually has a lot of traits that are similar to Link. His pointy ears, the ocarina, the sword, Link. One of the things I like to note is that Tapion goes back in time in order to, he doesn't go back in time. He goes into the spaceship that looks like the time machine. And it sort of hints at the fact that Tapion was probably that third warrior that cut Hirudegarn in half in the first place. I mean, think about it. They didn't really name the third warrior that cut Hirudegarn in half. They just named that Tapion and Minutia were the ones that were able to hold Hirudegarn down via the ocarina. So, and also the ocarina got destroyed when Hirudegarn got released the last time. So who knows, with Tapion only sporting the sword, he could have been the one to slice Hirudegarn in half in the first place. Who knows? But I just love this story. I really love this story. And like I said, the only thing I don't like about this movie is the fact that Goku's the one that hogs the fame in the end. It's like, this movie was about Kid Trunks. This movie was Kid Trunks developed. It did a good job showing Kid Trunks off as a person. It didn't show off any particular traits that weren't showed off in other movies, but it did show that Kid Trunks looks up to Tapion as a brother, kind of like a brother. And he even calls the Trunks brother towards the end of the movie. So it's good to see those two developments work out. And it's like, I don't like the title of this movie because it's called Wrath of the Dragon, as if the Dragon Fist was the whole thing this movie was revolved around. Like, the Dragon Fist shows up in, the last 10 minutes of the movie? I don't care about that. This movie could have been called something else, like Dragon Ball Z, The Origin of the Blade, or something. Like, this was, or Dragon Ball Z, the Kono's hero Tapion, or Dragon Ball Z, the Ocarina of Concealing, or Hirudegarn Unsealed, or something. Like, it could have been called anything else other than Wrath of the Dragon. Wrath of the Dragon was a very piss poor name for this movie because this movie isn't about Super Saiyan 3 Goku. It isn't about the Dragon Fist. It's about the relationship that Kid Trunks had with Tapion and the threat. Now, for the villain, Hirudegarn. Hirudegarn, you already know how I feel about villains with no personalities and villains that just destroy. But Hirudegarn wasn't really the main villain here, now was he? The real villain here was the wizard Hoi. He ends up getting destroyed by Hirudegarn, much like a lot of other villains who take control of beings that are way more powerful than them. I'm looking at you, Bobbity and Majin Buu and Paragus and Broly. So, Hirudegarn destroys Hoi, which I pretty much saw coming from the get-go. But Hoi had like a pretty evil plot, and his backstory of being the last Kafka and still wanting to destroy all of the life that isn't theirs. And even Bulma points it out when she's talking to Tapion in the nighttime scene. She gets mad at all of like the intolerance that certain people can have. Because that's what the motif was for the Kafkas. The Kafkas were very, bigots. They were bigots. They were intolerant of anyone else that wasn't them. They were racist, if you will. But, so Kafka's the one that pretty much is pulling all the strings here until the very end when he gets killed. At that point, Hirudegarn just becomes a raging monster. So I'm not too mad at the villain because Hoi is the real villain here. Hirudegarn is just the thing that's causing the destruction. So, there you go. Like I said, this movie really has a good plot. And the character interactions, not just with Kid Trunks and Tapion, but with Gohan and Videl and Bulma, Goten and Trunks, Kid Trunks and Tapion, obviously, which is the main focus of the movie. It's just to see moments like that, and they still, this movie could have been longer, actually. I think this movie's only 50 minutes long. It could have been an hour and 30 if they had pulled their cards right. This is a really well-crafted movie. So, I really love all of the scenes and the interactions and things like that. Just the fight aside, this was just a generally good movie. So, would I recommend this movie? I would recommend you watch all of the Majin Buu saga first to get a good feel of who Goten and Trunks are, especially Kid Trunks, because he's the one this movie mostly revolves around. But, yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie. Even if you're kind of new to Dragon Ball Z, this movie would be good just because of the fact that, you get to see all of the heroes and how they fight and how they handle the situation, and just, it's got a good plot, like just a generally good movie plot. So yeah. And with that said, I'm done with this movie, so the next movie I review will be movie 14, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. Can't wait for that one. I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3 out.